the average amount of a unit for a multifamily unit, especially if it's permanent supportive housing units, is about $700,000 a unit. That is really, really expensive. Now, you build into that it's going to stay affordable for a long term, but we don't put enough emphasis on cost. Like, are we incentivizing developers to reduce the cost of affordable housing? We put a lot of other things on affordable housing. We want it to be more energy efficient than any other development. We want it to have childcare. We want it to have extra services. We want it to be the cream of the crop. And some of those, what we view as public benefits, they cost money. And so at some point, policymakers are going to have to decide, do I want all of these layers of public benefit that cost a lot more, which means I'm going to have fewer units, or do I want to roll back some of those extras that we're putting onto affordable housing so that we can reduce the cost? I have a development now that is about 58 units of housing. It's a co-shared space. It's a beautiful development. It would be wonderful. It would be the perfect model for permanent supportive multifamily housing. The construction costs for that development was less than $300,000 a unit. Why are we not building more of those types of developments with tax credits as opposed to layering all the public benefit? And I'm not saying the public benefit is bad. What I'm saying is you have to have trade-offs. And at some point, is it worth having all of those public benefits when you know you have a supply issue, or do you want to just build more housing? Safe, sanitary, decent housing. How do we get to that? And I think what we need to do is we need to evaluate the tax credit system. We need to evaluate the scoring system. And we need to figure out a way to where we can increase that by looking at cost efficiencies.
That's what we have been wondering, because we hear the numbers for some projects and it's like $1 million a unit, $700,000 a unit, and it's hard to fathom
to get your head around that.
Why it adds up to that. And these are big public projects.
Right.
So you think potential corruption or what's going on, but it seems there's a lot of programs in there.
It's a multiple things. It's time that it takes, the carrying costs, the financing costs for putting 7 different financing sources. It's taking 3 years to get through 3 different rounds of public funding. It's the extras that we put on affordable housing. California's regular building standards are the highest in the nation. Our energy efficiency standards are the highest in the nation. You can't hardly get any greener. But on affordable housing, we wanted them to be even greener than just our regular housing. And so it's like, let's think about this. We're saving what? A teaspoon, a tablespoon of greenhouse gas at $50,000 a door? And I know that is satire. That's satire. That's probably, but that's the trade-offs that we need to be thinking about. New construction is already energy efficient. Do we need to add an extra onto that? Because every extra that we add onto that is going to increase the cost.
You mentioned the cost. Is it clear to developers? Do developers have incentives to keep the cost down, or there's no incentive in this current
I would say for housing that is financed with low-income housing tax credits, there isn't a large enough incentive to keep costs down. In 2000, we did for the state tax credits, because in 2019, the governor did pass a state tax credit, which is about $500 million that was coming in annually to help support and increase the supply, because we were underutilizing our 4%. Like, we weren't using all of it. It later became much more oversubscribed, but at that point in time, it wasn't. And that very first year of the state tax credits, the tiebreaker, or to get the state tax credits, you had to show cost efficiencies. That was later changed, that scoring system was changed, and you saw people using more state tax credits and more state subsidy. But that initial year, you did see a spike because cost efficiency was built into the program. Since then, we've rolled that back, but I do believe we really need to really think about the cost of affordable housing, streamlining that process and making it a lot less complicated.
what do you recommend? You have a lot of years of experience in this space. How would you do it with the resources we have? How would we be able to create more of these units?
I would start by a thorough evaluation of our tax credits. And I would start with and we have a housing plan. We have local governments who have plans. Sometimes it's just talking to one another. And the state, in my opinion, shouldn't be picking individual projects. The state should serve more of, if they're providing funding, we are going to defer that to local governments to do if local governments have all of their pieces in place. We sometimes, as the state of California, do it backwards, in my opinion, and that we want to dictate the individual projects, where what you should be saying is, if your projects look like this and meet these basic parameters, here's your block funding, local governments, because local governments are the ones that are approving the actual developments. So how do you incentivize local governments to quickly approve housing so that you're not running against those roadblocks? You give local governments that political cover to approve the housing, and you do more block grants. I think this notion or this narrative that if it's competition, that you get the best product, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think those projects that meet certain parameters that are ready to go and shovel ready should be able to go to a counter and say, my project's ready to go. I meet all these, first come, first serve with the projects that look a certain way, and they get the financing. How do we create a system that is more shovel ready, ready to go, providing developer certainty that decreases the time? I think you would get more projects.
And you mentioned the local governments, they have the main say in approving these, right? In terms of underground. Can you explain that, how the process works?
Each land use decision, whether it's approving something, whether it's a commercial development or a housing development, local government approves those projects on a discretionary basis. Those projects will come before their planning commission and sometimes their city council. On those discretionary actions, they can say no, and oftentimes feel pressure to say no, because that's when NIMBYs will show up and say, we don't want you to build that housing. Because property taxes or affordable housing, you get less property taxes, a local government may be more inclined to approve that car lot as opposed to that housing development. So we have created a set of policies that incentivize local government not necessarily to approve housing development.